On the chaotic battlefield, Zhang Yi's precise sniping continued to systematically eliminate the bronze-armored zombies that posed a severe threat to the coalition forces. His well-prepared position and enhanced ammunition turned the tide, preventing what would have been catastrophic casualties had those elite zombies reached the defensive lines. Even as he fired shot after shot, a question nagged at his mind: how had the snow worship cult, with its lack of substantial fortifications, survived the relentless zombie hordes for so long? He muttered his perplexity to himself, turning his rifle to dispatch another target. The sheer scale of the enemy was overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of mindless corpses advanced under simple, brutal commands, their only goal seemingly the total annihilation of every human present. While the 5 allied factions battled the frontal assault, Dian Junwo and his 6-person Jiangnan investigation team had circled to the rear. Utilizing satellite imagery, they coldly observed the terrifying scene as zombie after zombie poured from the subway tunnels, their numbers quickly swelling into the hundreds of thousands and showing no sign of stopping. Kong Sheng voiced concern over the staggering count and the defenders' endurance. Wu Di, arms crossed, responded with a sneer, dismissing the fate of Tianhai City's inhabitants as irrelevant so long as they bought enough time for the team's true mission. Dian Junwu offered no rebuttal, his sunglasses hiding his eyes as he watched the dark mass swarm toward the cult's territory. Once the flow from the tunnel ceased, he gave the order to move. However, upon reaching the tunnel entrance, Meng Siyu's reconnaissance revealed a trap, a terrifying concentration of corpses, including many bronze-armored variants, lying in wait below. The Zombie King had learned from their previous decapitation strike. Dian Junwu declared they would wait, allowing the surface battle to lure more zombies away from the underground lair before making their move. The pressure on the Allied defensive line mounted relentlessly. Despite Zhang Yi's crucial support, the zombie numbers were simply too vast, estimated at no fewer than 200,000, not counting the swarms of giant rats that gnawed through combat uniforms. Human soldiers fell in droves, and the line would have shattered within minutes without the bolstering presence of numerous superhumans. Assessing the deteriorating situation, Zhang Yi made a tactical decision. He ordered Liang Yu, Uncle Yu, and Fatty Su to leave his side and reinforce the most vulnerable sections of the defense. He kept the mutant cat Hua Hua close, trusting in its formidable melee strength, high mobility, and tank-like defense to act as his personal bodyguard and ensure a viable escape route if needed. His primary commitment remained the safety of his own people, not a sacrificial last stand for the coalition. Within the relative quiet of St. John's Cathedral, a different kind of tension simmered. Yuan Kongye stood serenely before the crucifix, her hands clasped in prayer, seemingly detached from the cacophony of death outside. Zhou Kur sat on a pew, her medical kit beside her, offering silent prayers for Zhang Yi's safety. Yuan Kongye's clear, cold voice broke her reverie, stating that only the devout received God's protection. When Zhou Kur met the sect leader's gaze, she felt an unsettling, captivating power. Yuan Kongye probed her insecurities, asking if she felt troubled by her inability to help her man. Zhou Kur's expression faltered, admitting she could only work from the rear as a doctor. Then came the temptation. Yuan Kongye suggested Zhou Kur had the potential to become an extraordinary person. The offer struck a deep chord. Zhou Kur had watched young Xia awaken, and she felt her own relevance in Zhang Yi's world diminishing. She craved the power to stand beside him, not behind him. The promise of the Ice Soul offered a path without the mortal risk she feared. Yuan Kongye's voice was alluring, her icy eyes compelling. She stated they needed power, that Zhang Yi needed Zhou Kur's help, and directly offered to make her an extraordinary being. Zhou Kur's heart raced with conflict. The desire for power warred with the memory of Zhang Yi's explicit warning to be wary of the cult. After a few seconds of intense internal struggle, her resolve solidified. She forced a polite, faint smile and declined the offer. A flicker of disappointment passed through Yuan Kongye's eyes before she calmly stated that the divine blessing was an opportunity not afforded to everyone and that Zhou Kur could return if she changed her mind. The sect leader then turned back to her prayers. At the rear of the church, away from this exchange, Li Jian's family and Su Beibei huddled together. Li Kale, traumatized and filled with hatred and fear toward Yuan Kongye, had buried himself completely under a blanket. Su Beibei held his hand, a silent comfort. For them, and for all the non-combatants in the cathedral, there was nothing to do but listen to the escalating sounds of battle and pray for a victory that felt increasingly distant. The defensive battle outside the Baishue sect's territory reached a fever pitch, devoid of any sophisticated tactics and defined purely by overwhelming numbers. A sea of over 200,000 zombies completely encircled the camp, launching ferocious assaults from every direction. The human coalition, with no route for retreat, fought desperately with every tool at their disposal: artillery barrages, pre-laid traps, unleashed supernatural abilities, and brutal hand-to-hand combat. The battlefield became a charnel house of flying viscera. Zombies were blown apart yet still crawled forward with relentless hunger, while human soldiers, though better armed, faced being drowned beneath the tidal wave of bodies with a single misstep. The pressure was immense, and casualties had already climbed to a staggering 30%. From his elevated sniper's nest, Zhang Yi performed with chilling efficiency, systematically eliminating nearly every bronze-armored zombie through pinpoint shots. His devastating long-range support single-handedly alleviated roughly 20% of the pressure on the Allied lines, preventing those incredibly resilient variants from shattering the human defenses. His team, though small, was exceptionally active across the battlefield. Liang Yu became a whirlwind of destruction, her adamantium sword cleaving through dozens of zombies with each sweep of its surging blade energy. Uncle Yu relied on the relentless fire of his massive Gatling guns to hold the line, while Fatty Su proved his immense value. His ability blanketed a radius of several kilometers in ice and snow, drastically slowing the zombie advance and creating perfect kill zones for the others. Despite their efforts, the situation grew more dire by the minute. After 20 minutes of brutal fighting, a grim-faced Xiao Honglian contacted Bian Junwo, reporting that their forces were on the verge of collapse. Bian Junwo responded with a cold assurance that his team was almost upon the Zombie King and urged them to hold on a little longer. This news provided a fragile thread of hope, compelling the defenders to fight on. Unbeknownst to them, Bian Junwo had ended the call while still positioned outside the underground lair. He was deliberately waiting, having deduced the Zombie King's lair was a trap filled with ambushing forces. His strategy was a grim test of endurance. By prolonging the surface battle, he aimed to force the Zombie King to commit its hidden reserves, thereby creating a true opening for his 7-man decapitation strike. As the battle stretched past 40 minutes, the defensive perimeter continued to shrink. This tightening, however, came with a horrific cost. Zombies that slipped through the cracks began infiltrating the buildings and subway depths where ordinary snow worship cult members had been hidden for safety. Without armed protection, these civilians were utterly defenseless. Screams pierced the air as 3 or 4 zombies could slaughter an entire floor, with desperate followers pleading at windows for a rescue that would never come. The faction leaders, including Zhang Yixin, could only offer hollow blessings for their return to the Divine Kingdom as they focused entirely on the crumbling frontline. Zhang Yi, frowning at the potential for rear-area panic, reluctantly used his rifle to pick off a dozen of the infiltrators, but such breaches were becoming more frequent. Ultimately, the areas housing the non-combatants were deliberately abandoned, a coldly calculated move. The scent of concentrated living humans acted as irresistible bait, drawing zombies away from the combat troops and buying precious, bloody time. Just as Zhang Yi processed this grim reality, a new threat announced itself. The mutant cat Hua Hua, stationed beside him, suddenly perked up its ears, whimpered low in its throat, and bared its sharp fangs in a posture of acute alarm. From his sniper perch, Zhang Yi maintained a vigilant watch, believing no enemy could approach unseen. He had, however, overlooked the sky. A warning growl from Hua Hua was his only alert before the mutant cat rapidly enlarged, shielding him. In less than a second, Zhang Yi sensed the danger and looked up to see a dozen winged, bronze-armored zombies descending from the darkness. Their bat-like wings and slender bodies marked them as a terrifying new variant. Hua Hua immediately launched herself at one, pinning it to the rooftop and tearing it apart with her claws. Zhang Yi reacted with cold precision, opening a massive dimensional portal in front of himself. 2 flying corpses, caught by surprise, flew into it. One was instantly sniped by Zhang Yi's rifle. The remaining creatures, wary of his defenses and Hua Hua's ferocity, circled menacingly before abruptly changing tactics. They streaked away, diving towards the beleaguered Allied forces on the ground. Zhang Yi shouted a warning into his communicator, but it was too late. The bronze-armored flyers were too fast and had adapted to avoid his sniper fire. They wreaked havoc among the soldiers, killing many in a brutal aerial assault. To make matters catastrophically worse, Zhang Yi's elevated view revealed a second, massive wave of zombies, tens of thousands strong, charging toward the already strained defensive line. The situation had become untenable. Zhang Yi knew that if Bian Junwo's decapitation strike did not succeed immediately, a total rout was inevitable. He activated his team comms and issued the order to disengage and prepare for a full retreat, planning to use his spatial gates to escape. His first thought, however, was for Zhou Kor's safety in the church. As he looked towards St. John's Cathedral, he saw 2 of the flying corpses dive straight through its damaged ceiling. Cursing, Zhang Yi activated his double portals, preparing to teleport to her aid. Screams erupted from within the church. Just as he was about to make his final jump, a brilliant, chilling white light exploded from inside the building. The 2 bronze-armored flyers were violently ejected, their bodies encased in thick layers of ice like grotesque sculptures before crashing to the ground. The ice shattered and they rose, shrieking with rage and fear, only to be engaged by the cult guards at the entrance. Zhang Yi, relieved but wary, stepped through his portals and into the chaotic interior of the church. Inside, terrified cult members huddled together. At the center, illuminated by light from the broken ceiling, stood Yuan Kongya, emanating an aura of serene, holy power. Zhang Yi instantly understood she was the source of the defensive blast. His eyes quickly found Zhou Kor, who was trembling behind a pillar, clutching a medical kit. Without a word, he strode over and pulled her into a firm embrace, telling her it was all right. Her tense body relaxed at his presence. Yuan Kongya watched this display of spatial ability with a curious, appraising glance. The sounds of battle and panic grew louder outside as more refugees battered at the doors. When Zhou Kor asked if they could hold out, Zhang Yi's expression was grim. He opened another set of portals, ignoring the pleas of others, and led Zhou Kor out of the church and back to his rooftop position. The world outside was a scene of apocalyptic collapse. Zombies and giant rats were flooding over the defensive lines. On the front line, Xiaohonglian blazed with white fire, Wei Dinghai summoned vast fields of ice, and Xing Tian's legion fought with desperate vigor, but their auras were dimming from exhaustion. The Bai Shui cult territory had become a slaughterhouse, cult members hiding in buildings and underground garages were being systematically hunted and killed. From the rooftop, Zhou Kor watched the zombie tide in horror, asking Zhang Yi what they should do. He coldly assessed that the line would fall within 10 minutes. Everyone except his team, with their means of escape, would die. He reiterated the retreat order to his team over the communicator. Fatty Sue's panicked, exhausted voice came through, begging for rescue as zombies threatened to overwhelm his position. Zhang Yi commanded Hua Hua, who leaped from the great height and plowed through the horde to retrieve the terrified Su Chunlei. As Fatty Su collapsed on the rooftop, gasping in relief, Zhang Yi continued to fight. He pulled grenades and explosives from his storage, hurling them into the densest clusters of zombies in a futile attempt to buy time. He knew his divine might, while powerful, lacked the scale to turn the tide. The battle had reached its climax, and the fate of everyone present now hinged entirely on the success or failure of Bian Zhen was delayed. Strike deep within the zombie king's lair. The desperate battle reached its climax just as Zhang Yi was preparing to order a full retreat. In a sudden and bizarre shift, the entire zombie horde, including the bronze-armored flying zombies, bronze-armored corpses, and ordinary zombies, ceased all attacks simultaneously. As if a switch had been flipped, they turned and fled in a disordered, panicked mass back toward the subway tunnels, their urgent cries filling the air as they abandoned what was moments from being a total victory. The symbiotic giant rats, after a moment of hesitation, followed suit, scurrying away after the retreating undead. The exhausted defenders watched in stunned disbelief, too terrified to pursue, only daring to breathe again as the horde receded into a distant black line on the horizon. A wave of overwhelming relief washed over the snow worship cult camp, manifesting as gasps, cries, and hysterical laughter from those who had survived the brink of annihilation. Xiao Honglian, forcing a smile, immediately cautioned everyone against complacency, ordering them to rest but remain battle-ready for potential remnants. The psychological toll was evident, many soldiers' war-dazed expressions, destined to be haunted by the trauma of the night. Zhang Yi's team, having conserved their strength per his orders, regrouped around him completely unscathed. Uncle Yu had engaged the bronze-armored zombies but emerged without a scratch thanks to his formidable durability and regeneration. As time stretched in the aftermath, the sheer scale of devastation became clear. Over 80% of the initial defensive force had perished, dealing a catastrophic blow to Tianhai City's combat effectiveness. The greatest losses, however, were inflicted upon the snow worship cult. The battle had occurred within their territory, and of their roughly 5,000 members, likely fewer than 500 remained. A heavy, silent gloom settled over High Priest Zhang Yixian and the cult's leadership. Amidst the scattered weeping, Zhou Kor, having clung tightly to Zhang Yi, asked to tend to the wounded. Zhang Yi, recognizing the shifted dynamics and diminished threat of the other factions, consented. The doctor moved across the battlefield, her gentle, skillful care bringing a semblance of human warmth and life back to the numb survivors. Gradually, the various factions began the grim task of recovery, gathering scattered supplies, food, medicine, and blankets for the wounded. Yuan Kongya then led the survivors who had taken shelter within St. John's Cathedral out into the devastation. With an expression of compassion, she instructed them to go and help care for the injured warriors, acknowledging that their survival was owed to those who fought. Li Jian and his wife, along with the young girl Su Beibei, joined the effort. Li Jian was racked with guilt and pain as he looked upon the carnage, realizing most of the neighbors he had brought to the cult's sanctuary were now dead. His wife, Zhang Jianfang, tried to console him, reminding him he had done his best in a brutal world where merely surviving each day was an achievement. As Li Jian sighed and went to carry stretchers, and Su Beibei brought hot water to the wounded, the long and harrowing battle for the cathedral finally came to a bloody, exhausted end.